Deal with distractions. Recent surveys have shown that roughly 2 hours a day are wasted as a result of distractions and interruptions in the workplace. On average, you get distracted every 8 to 10 minutes. That sounds a lot, but the reality is, depending on your environment, you're interrupted every few minutes, whether that's by email, the internet, phones, etc. And it can take up to 15 minutes to return to a serious task after dealing with email. A couple of minutes of distraction each time soon adds up. Getting constantly interrupted through the day breaks your flow and you aren't as productive. There are internal and external sources of distraction. Internal distractions, you lose focus, might be through boredom, feeling tired, your thoughts, even hunger. External distractions, such as outside influences of people, noise, and visual distractions. What are your main sources of distraction and interruption in your day? If you're not sure, create a distraction log. Make a note of the typical interruptions and distractions that occur during a normal working day. In the workbook, log on a daily and a weekly basis how often you get interrupted or distracted during the day, who, what, and for how long. Review what could you do to reduce or avoid these distractions. When do you get interrupted the most and the least? Are there certain times of the day when you're more likely to be interrupted? How to deal with the main sources of distractions. Email we'll come on to in a bit more detail later, but the first thing to do is to switch off those notifications. For phone calls, switch to silent, use voicemail, or screen your calls, or ask a colleague if you can redirect your calls if you want some undisturbed time. For people, if you're interrupted, manage the interruption. Do you need or want to deal with it there and then? Or is it something you can deal with later? Stand up. It's more difficult to have a long meeting if both of you are standing. Make appointments. Don't let people interrupt you as a matter of course. Let people know when you're available and when you don't want to be interrupted. Book a meeting room or use an empty office for a couple of hours, where you can be away from your normal desk and people are less likely to interrupt you. If you work in an office, work from home for the day. If you work from home, work in a coffee shop or book a co-working space or go to another office for the day or for a few hours. If you find the clutter of your environment a distraction, get it organised so you don't waste time trying to find things. Use walls, whiteboards and pinboards to keep things in view but off the desk. Put things away or tidy up at the end of the day. Set a time limit on the interruption. The inevitable "have you got a minute?" Make sure it is just that, or say no if you're busy. Avoid the interruptions by organising your time and planning out your day. Set aside specific times to deal with email and phone calls. When you get interrupted, put a time limit both on yourself and the source of the interruption. Even if it's your manager, you can still manage the interruption, particularly if you're already working on something important. Get yourself a kitchen timer or use a Pomodoro app and set it to the time you have to complete the task you're working on, when you're more likely to stay focused and less likely to get distracted when you know there's a limited amount of time available. How critical or important is it that you deal with the interruption and respond immediately, or can it wait until later in the day, tomorrow, or even another time? Create better boundaries and set expectations up front if you want to be more productive and avoid misunderstandings. Agree response times and levels of service during the initial conversation or a discussion. I'm sure you've all received emails or phone calls from a colleague, a client, or even your boss, either early in the morning or late at night. Perhaps you've even sent them yourself. You or they may even expect a response outside normal working hours. What difference will it make whether you respond late in the evening or the following morning? Clients might expect an instant response, but is that reasonable or justified? If you work in a support environment, it might be part of your job role to respond quickly. If it's not, then manage their expectations rather than just reacting to it. How many of you have or will be contacted or had to deal with work issues when you're either out of the office or on holiday? What does this say about your working patterns or workload? Technology has blurred the boundaries between work and home life, enabling 24/7 connectivity to the office. Just because you can be contacted, read and respond to email outside of working hours doesn't mean you should or that you have to. It's now even more important to create strong boundaries around your workday to protect your personal time, especially when you're working from home. Set clear expectations and boundaries with colleagues and clients so you can work on your priorities, not theirs. Create clear boundaries for the technology you use for work. Switch it off or don't respond to work-related emails or phone calls, especially in the evening and weekends. When you respond to emails and phone calls outside of normal office hours, you set a certain expectation that you can be contacted at any time. They'll expect a similar response every time. If you're always saying yes and accepting everything that comes across your desk, you'll get more and more passed to you. Start saying no more often. You can say no in a way that isn't rude or unhelpful. I'm glad you asked, but I'm too busy to do that right now. I don't have my diary with me. Can I get back to you later? And I'm not able to do that, but perhaps someone else might be able to help. Can I let you know tomorrow? You don't need to make excuses or go into long explanations. Be open, upfront, and honest. Don't let people down if you say yes and then have to say no at a later date. Because is a useful word when saying no or making a request. I can't do that because. I'd like you to do this by because. What are your working hours? If you plan to finish at 5 p.m. and you don't have time for all your tasks that day, reprioritize. What do you need to drop in order to finish on time? When and what is the best way to contact you? Email, messaging? How quickly will you respond to emails or phone calls? The same day, within 24 hours? Yes, boundaries will vary depending on your job role, and there will always be expectations or clients that take priority and need an immediate response, but these should be the exception, not the norm. Keep your work and communication with colleagues and clients to working hours. Respect their time in the same way they should respect yours. Respect other people in and around your space. If you're having a chat, do it away from where you may be disturbing others. If you're meeting with colleagues, book a meeting room. Be aware of disturbing others around you and keep desk meetings short. If you have good boundaries, people will respect your time. If your boundaries are unclear, they will make more and more demands on all of your time. Action points. What are your main sources of distraction? When do you get interrupted the most? When do you get interrupted the least? Create a distraction log. What 3 actions will you take to reduce your distractions? What do you need to say no to?